So West Coast on a 10-game winning streak as we reach the bye at the halfway mark of the season, with impressive wins over fellow September contenders GWS, Richmond and Hawthorn in that 6-game block. Tough win over Freo, great win over Port. I want to talk about the next 3 games in a little bit more detail because they were 3 fantastic wins, but all for different reasons. Let's start with GWS in Sydney. You won that game by 25 points, but it meant a lot more than just a 25-point win, didn't it?
It did, and I mentioned there that we were still finding our identity and our brand a little bit, and because there was so much change over the off-season and the new stadium come into play, and even our training base is changing as we speak. So I think in this period we established some real resilience, and none more so than the Giants game up at Spotless. We were missing several players. I can't remember who they were. I think it was McGovern, Shuey, Nick Nat. So there's 3 really important players for us, and we managed to play our way for the whole day. And I think the boys up forward, Darling and Kennedy, were in pretty good form. But the midfield of the Giants is pretty special. So our midfield really stood up that day and gave us some really good supply, and I think it was a bit of a scrap, but we held on to a 20-point lead for most of the second half, and that really, I think coming home from that game, it made us feel like there was a real squad mentality, and we had that as a real theme for that game, and I think that paid us back at the end of the year. So
squad mentality, by that you mean the fact that you may not have your best 22 out on the park, but anybody who's going to step into this is going to fill that role and do their job?
Yeah, we spoke about that before the game, and I think that that carried probably through the whole year, didn't it?
Yeah, on that day, Ainsworth debuted, and I think that might have been our 5th or 6th debutant for the year. So I think that fitted into the whole squad mentality as well.
Then we fast forward to the following week. You took on the reigning premiers Richmond in round 9, and it was that win, I think externally, that made everybody sit up. It was a real eye-opener for the rest of the competition. You went top of the table and you beat Richmond pretty convincingly. That was an outstanding performance.
That was a good game. I think the first quarter we really started well, and then the Richmond style of play took over in the second quarter. So at half-time it was pretty equal, and we ran away with that game. I felt like Richmond still had another gear to go to, and they looked like a seasoned team that was, okay, we didn't win today, but we're still okay. And that confidence you could still see there with Richmond. But for us to win like that, the boys did get caught up in the enthusiasm of the week and how it was probably the largest crowd they'd played in front of at the stadium, and it was just one of those finals type atmospheres that the players really enjoyed playing under. So that was an important game for us, but it was probably a sign of things to come in the back half of the year.
How long did it take you to have Perth Stadium feel like it was home, Optus Stadium?
Well, it's interesting. We didn't get to train there pre-season, and we probably got there in mid-March, I suppose. We had a few walkthroughs there, and the change rooms are ours. So we own the change, or we get to use the change rooms. They're branded our way. So it probably still isn't our full-on home ground yet. We've only played 13 or 14 games there, but our style of play probably adapted to the ground a little bit, you would have thought, Jane.
And I think what helped is our new facility out at Lathlane that we're building. We've got the 2 ovals, one the size of Optus Stadium and the MCG, so all that helps, I suppose, in the planning to play at that size ground.
Did you have to do much tweaking? Is there, people might say, well, yeah, all right, Subiaco, different dimensions to Optus Stadium. How do you go about tweaking your game plan so you can get that competitive advantage?
It's a really difficult question because, the whole season itself, the travel factor to the MCG or to even the Gabba, there's such a wide expanse, and we're used to playing on a skinny ground. Not only that, you couldn't train anywhere else, so we'd train at Subi on a Wednesday and then fly to the MCG for a Saturday game, and there's an extra 20 metres to deal with. So I never thought it had a big impact on wins or losses, but no doubt the way we play suits all types of grounds, not just skinny ones. So in fact, we probably struggled on the skinnier grounds this year. We played in Tasmania. I think there's only 122 metres wide, whereas the MCG is 145 metres. And we struggled in against North in Hobart. So maybe it's flipped around a little bit, but I think we've adapted better to the bigger ground.
At what point did you start to dare to dream that, hey, this team might be a little bit better than maybe everyone thought it was at the start of the season? Because it was after that Richmond win that suddenly everybody sat up in the football world and went, hey, West Coast are pretty damn good here. They might be a chance.
Yeah, I don't think you dare to dream. I suppose you plan a lot, and you when you hit a bit of form as a club, well, our coaches do it anyway. We do tend to stand back a little bit and let the players take it as far as they can, and if we need to tweak some things, which we did later on in the year, we definitely stepped in. But there was a little bit of a sweet spot we hit. So as a coaching group, we do stand back a little bit and let the leaders really carry it as far as they can and take that momentum to levels which only they can go to. So yeah, we probably stood back and let them go a little bit, and then we got to the bye and they were a little bit tired by the time we hit the bye, weren't they?
Yep.
So.
But impressively, after that, the high of the Richmond win, you then had to go to Melbourne and face Hawthorn, which is a team that you hadn't beaten in Melbourne for 12 years, Jamie. But once again, the players managed to get themselves up and deliver.
Yeah, they did. I think if you looked at the stats leading into the game, odds were definitely against us. But the boys, they developed a plan early in the year, actually. It was before the Bulldogs game. Some focus points that they wanted to do when they travelled and when they went away, and they seemed to have been executing them. And then when they got the Hawthorn game, it was a big game, and it was a really different type of game. It wasn't fast, free-flowing. It was quite congested, and it was a real arm wrestle, and the boys really managed it well. And to grind away and get a win like that was great for the boys' confidence.
I'm going to give the forward coach a bit of a pump up here. The team kicked 75-plus points in the first 11 games, including 5 centuries. Jack Darling, was he in career best form? He kicked 28 goals in his first 9 games, including 6 in that game against Richmond before he injured the ankle. What was the key to him finding that consistency? He's always had the brilliance, but he managed to start to string it together.
Yeah, he's obviously his work rate, and he's got some athletic ability that he's always had. He was just really had a simple focus on getting to as many contests as he could, and he was in a rare form in winning those contests. He's always been pretty good at halving them and finding a way to get that done, but he was winning contests, often outnumbered, and then what happens from there, it's a bit of a snowball effect. The boys get a bit of confidence and they start looking for him a bit more. Obviously, JK was out for a number of those games, but then when the two of them combined, they had some really good chemistry. And as I said, the boys start looking for him a little bit more, and it just snowballs from there. But yeah, he was in some sort of form.
Simo, what do you think Jack is on his development curve?
Look, he's 26, I think, 25, 26. So I dare say, when he came back after that injury, it took him a few weeks to get back into it. So I would have thought he's right in the sweet spot, to be honest. There should be, 5 or 6 more years of what we saw this year, and he sets the bar pretty high. I think expectations have always been high with Jack, and because he burst onto the scene straight away, I think everyone's assuming he's just going to go to another level. So we saw that this year, and Jamie's right. When Josh Kennedy's in the side, and you've got the ball in your hand, it's a bit like Wayne Carey or Buddy Franklin. You just kick it in their direction, and I think now Jack's starting to combine really well with Josh, and that's a really good thing for the club. And
also for defenders, obviously now they can't just zone off and play on Josh because they know that Jack is going to attract so much attention. The game changed a little bit this year. We noticed, and we were the same. There was less numbers dropping off, and if you brought an extra player up to the stoppage, quite often that defender would follow that player up to keep the pressure on the game, whereas in years gone past, that player would drop off in front of a Kennedy or a Darling. So we saw throughout the season there was more one-on-one contests, and if we can get the ball in there quick, we got more of those. So that's the trend of the game at the moment. That'll no doubt change in seasons to come. You mentioned just a little earlier that it had been a really gruelling first half of the season. What were your thoughts and expectations as you hit the bye? Well, we've got the same focuses really on finals every year. It's just to qualify as quick as we can. So if you had told me at the bye it was going to be 10-1, that was on the right track. So we're real focused on 13 wins. Let's get to 13 wins, and then we can worry about the rest of the season as we go. So my initial thoughts were we're 10 games into that, and hitting the bye was important because we had a pretty big campaign, and there's a few sore guys that we had running around. The travel does hit you a little bit in the mid part of the season, and the bye came at a good time, but we didn't start too well after the bye, which I'm sure we'll address in a minute. Beautiful segue. The Eagles came off the bye in top spot at 10-1. Their round 13 opponent, the only team to have beaten them in 2018 to that point. The football world watching on with interest as we check out the highlights of rounds 13 to 16.